Thursday night's race at Kansas Speedway was the least watched Cup Series race of this century. So why are we still talking about midweek races? How's it going, y'all? My name is Eric and welcome to Out of the Groove. Hope your weekend is going well if you are watching this shortly after release. Tonight, we're doing trivia night on this channel. We'll be going live. Over the last couple weeks, a whole bunch of you guys have sent in Kahoot quizzes. If you don't know what Kahoot is, it's basically an online platform that allows you to basically take quizzes in real time with hundreds of people around the country, and it keeps track of points and standings and everything. So we're gonna do a bunch of those tonight for fun. All of them, of course, feature a NASCAR theme. So tonight, it's NASCAR Trivia Night, 8 p.m. Eastern Time. See you all there. But for now, let's talk about TV ratings. And unfortunately, for the second Out of the Groove in a row, I don't really have a whole lot of good news to give you guys. So on Thursday night, the NASCAR Cup Series raced at Kansas Speedway. It was the 5th midweek race of the season, the 4th points-paying midweek race, because the All-Star race a couple weeks ago was also held on a Wednesday night. Midweek races, of course, have not been seen in decades as far as the NASCAR Cup Series is concerned, but this year, with the COVID pandemic forcing NASCAR to halt the season for 3 months almost, they became a necessity in order to get all 36 Cup Series races still in by the end of November. So basically, out of necessity, NASCAR, as well as Fox and NBC, have kind of been forced to experiment with midweek races, something that NASCAR leadership over the last couple of years has expressed they are potentially interested in going forward, adding midweek races to the Cup Series schedule, Wednesday night Cup Series shows. So this year, as bad as the overall situation has been, presented a great opportunity to kind of test what a midweek race might do for ratings, how fans would react, all that kind of stuff. And I will say, in general, fans who do watch the midweek races seem to like them okay. I have seen mixed reviews. There are a lot of people, of course, who work Wednesday nights. I know things are wildly different right now in the middle of this pandemic, but still I've seen plenty of complaints that say, I work Wednesday night, so I can't watch. Like, why did we move it from the weekend? But I will say, most people who do watch the races on Wednesday and Thursday nights seem to like them for the most part, or at the very least don't mind that they're being run in the middle of the week. But unfortunately, the numbers themselves are the problem right now. So Kansas Speedway's race last Thursday night on NBCSN cable TV earned a 0.9 rating and 1.47 million viewers, making it the smallest audience for a Cup Series race since at least the year 2000. Ooh, that is a gut punch. That is a difficult number. Anytime you see a Cup Series rating less than 1, ooh, that's a gut punch. You just don't see it. You'd really never see that. So I'm going to preface the rest of this video with this. I know TV ratings are not indicative of the full story or even necessarily the full value. When I go over into my living room over there and watch the race on Sunday or Thursday, whatever it is, and I switch it over to NBC, NBCSN, whatever the channel's on, when I watch the race, Nielsen TV ratings are not counting that. They're not like reading my cable box and saying, oh, that guy in Texas is watching NASCAR tonight, better mark that on the calendar. No, Nielsen gathers their TV ratings based on a specific sample size of people who they are tracking, whose viewership habits they are tracking, and they use that small sample size, basically a poll, if you will, to estimate with a good deal of certainty what the basic viewership numbers are for the entire country. So chances are, unless you're a Nielsen family or have some sort of ties there, when you turn into NBCSN or NBC to watch the race this weekend or next weekend, they're not directly counting your viewership. It's a guesstimate based on other information they have, basically polling data that they have. So Nielsen TV ratings do not tell the full story, and they're not necessarily entirely accurate all the time, but when we're comparing Nielsen TV ratings to other Nielsen TV ratings, I think you can at least sense a trend and gather some data based off that. So Kansas last weekend was the least watched Cup Series race in at least 20 years. That's a pretty bad record to have, but it's indicative of a larger trend. So I mentioned there's been 4 points-paying midweek races run this year. There's been 5 total if you count the All-Star race, and pretty much universally, ratings have sucked for the midweek races. I mean, they've been considerably down compared to Sunday afternoon races. And so while Kansas set a record low on Thursday night, if we actually look at the 3 least viewed races of the last 20 years, they've all come this year, and they've all been midweek races. That extra Charlotte race that was added in May, now there was a rain delay and a postponement involved, that race only got 1.51 million viewers, and Martinsville just last month got 1.71 million viewers. For reference, every single Sunday afternoon race this year has seen well over 2 million viewers per race, whether that's on cable or, of course, broadcast TV is always going to get a little bit of a bump. Now, people, of course, are going to point to, and I just mentioned it, how weather has played a factor in many of the midweek races so far. The Bristol All-Star race was one of the few midweek races that wasn't affected by weather, and that race did hit 2 million viewers, but it was still less than, I think, every other Cup Series race this year that was run on a weekend. So even the All-Star race, which had all this extra hype behind it, the first All-Star race at Bristol, all the little gimmicks like the neon lights under the rear of the cars, the choose rule, of course, the numbers being slid back, all those new changes, new ideas, Bristol, of course, being the venue, And even that midweek race barely cracked 2 million viewers. So that's all I'm saying. Midweek races consistently, blah. But of course, people are going to point to weather, and this last Thursday, people are going to point to Major League Baseball's opening night. The Yankees played, and I think the Dodgers played as well, so those are the two biggest cities in the country. Famous, popular baseball teams. Baseball's been off the air for months. Of course, those games probably drew in significant ratings, but at some point, anytime the ratings are bad, we say, well, look at the rain delay, look at the competition. There was a baseball game that night. There was an NBA Finals game that night. We always point to that when the ratings are down. The same way, when the ratings are good, we always point to well, yeah, because there's no other sports on TV. Of course, that's why Darlington got 6.5 million viewers. Or, sure, this race was up compared to the same race last year, but if you compare weekends, they're exactly the same. There's always going to be a qualifying effort, whether the ratings are up or the ratings are down. It's never always good or always bad news. So if we just simplify it and look at the raw numbers, it does not take a mathematician to determine that midweek races are getting less viewers than weekend races consistently. So what's the deal? Why are we still talking about midweek races? This should just put the nail in the coffin, right? And end any consideration of midweek races being a staple on the schedule going forward, right? Shouldn't this just end it? For me personally, I think it should, but for Fox, for NBC, the two broadcasters that are spending a ton of money to put these races on, there could be some positives they're still seeing from this, so I will talk about those as well. I love it when NASCAR experiments. You guys know me, I'm all for trying most things in NASCAR at least once. Slide the numbers back on the door, sure, try it at least once. Underglow, yeah, try it once at least. Charlotte Roval, Indianapolis Road Course, new tracks, yeah, of course, try it out. I want to see what happens. And so when NASCAR announced midweek races for this year, I was all for trying it out. I mean, of course, this year it was kind of a necessity, like I said, but I was 100% on board. I was willing to give it the benefit of the doubt and say, hey, maybe we're going to find something here. Maybe this is going to be a secret hidden gem that we didn't know about for decades. I was willing to try it out and give it a shot, but let's just face it. Wednesday night, Thursday night, NASCAR has way too much to go up against. Cable news dominates Wednesdays and Thursday nights. They dominate basically every weeknight. And I just don't see NASCAR cracking into that audience without aggressive advertising. Because that's one thing I've heard a lot of people say. For Thursday's Kansas races, they didn't even know it was happening. They didn't see any marketing for it, any advertising for it. Maybe they watched my show and saw it, or they listened to their favorite podcast and saw it, or something like that. But most people didn't know there was a race Thursday night because they just didn't see any marketing for it. So NASCAR, Fox, NBC, if they want to do midweek races like that, they might be forced to just pay a lot of money for more marketing and broadcasting and all that stuff, but I don't know if they're going to want to spend that extra change when they could just run Sunday when everyone's expecting them to. Anyway, there are some positives potentially that Fox and or NBC might be taking away from these midweek race experiments. A lot has been made about NASCAR's desire to try and end the Cup Series season earlier in the year. Last year, Homestead was run on November 17th. This year, the final race of the season is scheduled for, I think the first weekend of November. So they moved it up almost a full week this year, and in the future, NASCAR, I think, is hoping to move that week up a few more weeks so that they don't have to compete with the NFL on Sundays for as long of their season. So perhaps NBC and or Fox see that as a win for them. If they can get the NASCAR season done by early October, that gives them a couple more weeks to focus on the NFL. NASCAR's not having to compete with the NFL as frequently, and it's definitely a fact that NFL affects NASCAR's ratings. And so in order to accomplish that and still run 36 races, they would have to run some midweek races, or maybe at the very least double headers, like Saturday, Sunday double headers, which I personally think might be the better bet at this point. So perhaps that would be a reason for NBC wanting to run some midweek races earlier in the year to kind of shorten the season, perhaps as far as actual calendar days and months. Not shorten the season as far as number of races, still have 36 races, but just have that happen over the course of 8 months instead of 9.5 the way it is now. But while I do think that's a possibility, even that I don't think makes a whole lot of sense if you just look at the numbers. I mean, even now, NASCAR's races that they run up against NFL games still pull in way more viewership than these midweek races have this year. I mean, if I just look at races that went up directly against NFL games on Sunday afternoon, last year, Indianapolis got 3 million viewers on NBC, Las Vegas got 2.4 million on cable, the Roval got over 3 million viewers, Kansas got 3.3 million, Martinsville 2.275 million, that was on cable, Texas 2.2 million on cable. The only race that got less than 2 million viewers last year going up against NFL games was Dover at 1.83 million, which was still more than the 3 races I've talked about already. So yeah, I'm sure if you didn't have to go up against the NFL, a lot of those numbers I just read you would have been higher, but all those numbers are already considerably higher than what the midweek races have gotten so far in 2020. So I don't know why you would replace that 2.4 million viewers you got on cable for Las Vegas up against NFL games for 1.6 million viewers sometime in Wednesday in July. I don't understand the point of that. You're still losing out on total viewership. Maybe NBC, maybe Fox has another reason for it. Maybe just getting the most number of total viewers isn't important to them. It's more important to them when and where they get those viewers. So maybe there's still a reason for them to pursue midweek races, but From a high level, just baseline looking at it, the numbers don't add up. I mean, perhaps Fox and NBC have other programming that they think would thrive on Sunday afternoons. And so if they're able to move NASCAR to Wednesday or Thursday night and still get good numbers, like maybe that's an overall win for the networks. I don't know, but I certainly don't think it's likely. I mean, NASCAR has been a staple on Sunday afternoon for decades now. Changing that, as opposed to changing whatever new thing you might have that's still new and still kind of finding an audience, doesn't make sense to me. I don't know why you'd mess with the thing that's been working for decades. To say NASCAR's been working for decades, obviously it's declined in recent years, so with that decline, sure, maybe radical things need to happen, but still, I don't know. The numbers this year don't back that up. I'm talking a lot about TV numbers. I'll get away from that because I know that's boring and that's a lot of jargon and all that stuff. My reason for not wanting NASCAR to continue with midweek races, I gave them a chance. I really gave midweek races a chance, but I don't want to see them anymore. Another reason has to do with in-person attendance. I think it's no secret. In-person attendance for midweek races will without a doubt be lower than the same races, the same tracks, if they were to run on Sunday afternoon. Most people in this country still work Monday through Friday in some capacity. So if you run the race on Wednesday night, you're pretty much guaranteed to see less travel from out of town than you're used to seeing. Since some people just can't afford to take, 1 or 2 days off from work to travel and get a hotel and all that stuff. Another thing that tracks will lose out on is camping. People like to camp for an entire weekend. They can watch Truck, Xfinity, Cup, all the action in between. But if the only show is going to be the Cup Series and it's only going to be on Wednesday, you're not going to get as much camping because less people are going to want to camp just for one night, perhaps, and again, have to probably take off work because it's a weekday. Another thing is that NASCAR races are all-day events. Vendors, sponsor booths, driver appearances, VIP experiences, all that stuff happens for many hours leading up to the green flag on race day. And it's possible to do all that on a Sunday because when the race is at like 2 or 3 p.m. on a Sunday, people get there at 7, 8 o'clock in the morning. They have all morning, all day to do all this stuff because it takes all morning and all afternoon to do everything there is to do at a typical NASCAR race. Pre-race concerts, all that stuff. If you run races on a Wednesday night, that stuff's going to be limited because, again, people have to work until 5 p.m. a lot of times. And again, it all comes back to you're going to draw less fans out for a midweek race than if you run the race on Sunday afternoon. It's not proven at this point, but I think it's safe to say that would happen. I do not want to see NASCAR continue to run midweek races. They don't have any more midweek races scheduled for 2020, as of now at least. Things, of course, can always change. I love that NASCAR and NBC especially were willing to try something new and were willing to experiment with a Thursday night Cup Series race, but quite frankly, these numbers are abysmal. I don't think it's acceptable for a NASCAR Cup Series race to draw in less than 1.5 million viewers when just earlier this year, before the Daytona 500, on Sunday afternoon, that race was peaking upwards of 12 million viewers. I understand NASCAR Cup Series races aren't going to bring in 6, 7, 8 million viewers consistently, but 1.5 million viewers, the least viewed race since at least the year 2000, that's unacceptable. And I don't want NASCAR and NBC and Fox to endorse that, to facilitate that further. I understand if it helps them end the season earlier and all that stuff, and it's good for the networks, good for everyone involved. They're the ones spending the big bucks. They get the final say. If that makes them happy, if midweek races make them happy, then all right, I guess we don't have a choice. But for me personally, since we already know that viewership is down for midweek races, and it's going to take a long time for marketing to kind of move the needle in that sense. NASCAR has a large audience that's used to Sunday afternoons. To try and get that herd to move to Thursdays or Wednesdays from one week to the next and bounce around like that, that's a tall task. It's just not going to happen anytime soon. I don't want to see NASCAR Cup Series races ending up with TV ratings less than 1 anymore. And we've seen it twice this year, and they've both been midweek races. None of the Sunday races are anywhere close to doing this, but the midweek races are just so much lower than the others. I just don't want to see that. Midweek races feel cheaper to me. And maybe it's just because I know less people are watching, so it feels like a less important event. These races feel rushed, and maybe it's just the pandemic and the different rules and the things throwing me off in that respect, but like I said earlier, NASCAR races, when you're there in person, are all-day events. But for me growing up, as a hardcore fan of NASCAR who rarely missed a race, even watching at home, races were kind of like an all-day event. I would wake up Sunday morning, eat breakfast, go to church, go get lunch or something like that. I'd be rocking my Matt Kenseth hat, my t-shirt, whatever it may be, and then early afternoon, once the race rolls around, I'd sit down on my couch, I'd watch the pre-race show back when they do it at the track, and they'd have like swarms of fans around the desk, and it was really hilarious. I'd watch all the pre-race show, I'd watch all the opening ceremonies, and then I would sit down, focus in. I'd have my laptop with things like RaceView or NASCAR.com or leaderboards and all that stuff, scanners open. I'd have all that stuff all around me, like my own RCR control center, if you will, in my living room. And I would sit there and focus for the 3 or 4 hours, however long the race was. And it was, again, by the time the race was over, it was like 5, 6 p.m. That was my day. NASCAR was my Sunday, and it was, I'm sure, for a lot of fans. It still is for a lot of fans out there. And so shortening that and trying to run these races like 6 p.m. on a Wednesday. I mean, let's face it, nowadays, when I wake up on a Wednesday, I got work to do. I'm answering emails, I'm working on videos like this, editing things, I got work, I got to run errands, all that type of stuff. And all of a sudden I look at my watch and it's like, oh, the race is starting in an hour, I better sit down and get ready for that. Like, it's just different, and it doesn't have the same level of prestige as a Sunday afternoon race does. This is a hard thing to explain. Maybe this is just my feeling. Everyone's gonna have a varying opinion on this. It's a very subtle thing. It's not a big complaint, but it is something I've noticed watching these midweek races, even compared to the other races being held without fans during this pandemic. I mean, there's a reason they didn't run the Brickyard 400 on a weekday. They ran that on Sunday. The big races, even during this pandemic, are still being held on weekends, only adding to the idea that weekend races are more prestigious than midweek races. So that's all I'm saying. Midweek races feel cheaper, and I think a large part of that is because I just know less people are watching. And it's because NASCAR has been on Sunday for literally decades. And now, I'm not one of those people that believe traditions should just stay the way they are just for tradition's sake. Like, I don't think that's a strong enough argument. But in this case, when it comes to changing the viewership habits of millions of people who are used to one thing for decades and decades, for generations, trying to change this mass group of people's viewing habits overnight is just not going to happen. You're not going to convert all these people from used to Sunday afternoons to showing up occasionally for a Wednesday night. You're just not going to do that. It's going to take years to build up that kind of habit in these viewers and NASCAR fans. And it's not going to happen anytime soon. So if NASCAR, if Fox, if NBC want to continue with midweek races for the 2021 season or beyond, just be prepared. Those races are going to get less viewers. They're going to see less attendance. They're going to see less press than Sunday afternoon races. And let me just tell you, you're not going to see the Coke 600. You're not going to see the Daytona 500. You're not going to see the Brickyard 400, the Southern 500, Talladega. You're not going to see the biggest races run on a Wednesday or Thursday night, even if this becomes common in 2021, because those are the biggest races. And the biggest audiences are on Sunday afternoon, and NASCAR and the networks know this. So it's only going to add to the illusion that weekday races are cheaper and less important. So I don't want to see midweek races in NASCAR beyond this year. I think the experiment failed, in my opinion, but we'll see what happens. Let me know what you guys think down in the comments. What are your opinions on midweek races? Would you like to see them continue? Would you like to see them kind of go away? This is the way I'm kind of talking about. Let me know what you guys think down in the comments. But thank you all for watching. Subscribe if you are new. Follow me on Twitter. Follow me on Instagram. And of course, a big thank you to my Patreon supporters. Couldn't keep doing this show without your support. Thank you all for continuing to support Out of the Groove and support these videos. If you also want to support the show, you can check out that top link down in the description. I greatly, greatly appreciate it, you all. More videos up later this week. Like I said, later tonight, there is a live stream NASCAR trivia night, so hope to see you all there. But thank you as always for watching this video. Thank you for sticking with me, and I will see you again very, very soon. Stay safe, everyone. Have a great rest of your weekend.